Hello and welcome to this Friday's ADHD Awareness Week conversation. I'm Eleni Sferudis, and with me today is Richard Lowe, also a coach here at the ADHD Advocate. And I will turn today's discussion over to Richard, who is going to be telling us about safety around ADHD. Richard.
Thank you, Eleni. How's it going?
Very well, you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Good to see you. Yeah, give me maybe 5-10 minutes. I'll go through my presentation, and then if you've got some questions and stuff at the end, you can always ask me.
Perfect.
All right. I put up a slideshow as well. Okay, just find that quickly. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here, and yeah, I'm gonna do a presentation on understanding how safety affects individuals with ADHD. I want to give you some history. So pre-pandemic, I was ADHD coaching already, and a lot of my clients came to me and kept on showing up with anxiety and overwhelm. And it just it was a real pattern. And I was kind of scratching my head about that. So I looked into it during the pandemic and actually became what's called a safe and sound practitioner. And this is a tool that has been made by the Integrated Listening Systems Company. And it's all based on polyvagal theory, which is a theory that Dr. Stephen Porges and other people around him, like Deb Dana, are big. Yeah, they came up with it, and it kind of explains that kind of recurring pattern of always being in fight and flight, and overwhelm, kind of shut down sometimes. And so one thing the training really gave me was a massive insight into our autonomic nervous system and its relationship with our brain. And it kind of got me thinking that okay, by the way, there's nothing on the screen yet, so that's a message from our technician, Lucy. Thank you, Lucy, for letting us know. I'm going to crack on, and then it's being recorded, so we can upload it live later anyway. Excuse me. So yeah, as I was saying, so I was really trying to work out, is it ADHD that kind of makes the body go into fight or flight, or is it the lived experience of ADHD and perhaps the kind of mild trauma that goes mild to serious trauma, depending on your experiences, on trying to fit into a neurotypical world, and yeah, it was a real journey. And so I thought, if I can actually help my clients understand perhaps a bit more about their autonomic nervous system and the relationship it has with their brain, then that might be able to give them some kind of bearing on where they are in the whole kind of picture. So during the coaching process, I mention situations and instances where they may have been triggered, and kind of just gently introduce the concept of polyvagal theory. Nothing heavy, nothing too scientific. And what that helps them do is build their own picture, their own autonomic nervous system, a picture of their own autonomic nervous system, which they put in their own words. And having it in their own vernacular is really, really key. And eventually we get to a stage where we can actually really name the states. And I'm going to quickly just move to the next slide. 1 second. I want to just go here. So these are the states. This is according to polyvagal theory. You will have seen other models that have, I think, green, red, yellow, blue. That's another one that people use. So they're all kind of based around the same kind of thing, but this talks about a ventral vagal system, which is kind of using language, our connection with our eyes, how our face looks, how welcoming do we look, that kind of thing. So that's that system, and that system is absolutely critical, and it's the kind of like the newest system we have as beings, because these other systems are quite old, and they've been around for years, but they've helped us survive all these years, so we need to also respect them. So what we try and do then is give a name to these particular states, and it has to be the client's name that they give to it. It doesn't have to be anything, but it helps if it's their their kind of language. So I had one client who put the green as calm, the orange as stormy, and the purple as foggy. So, and that kind of correlates with the calm and connected, feeling safe, the stormy, feeling a little bit unsettled and in fight and flight, and the foggy is probably somewhere between shut down and a blended state, so maybe a freeze state, so somewhere between the orange and the purple. Anyway, so once they've got that picture, we also talk about the autonomic nervous system's kind of connection with executive functioning, because if we take ADHD as being fundamentally executive dysfunction, so we have issues, varying issues with executive functioning. I'm going to move the slide again so we can see what that looks like. So I've just done a chart here. Please ignore the percentages for the moment. This is all being well, we can put all of our resources into planning, prioritizing, task initiation, organization, impulse control, etc., etc. And that's when things are good, we have resource available to resource all of these areas if necessary, and our executive function is good. When we have ADHD, some areas may be impaired, and that's also understandable. But when we get emotional dysfunction or emotional regulation issues, which is essentially when our autonomic nervous system is kicking off, then what happens is we end up resourcing this part of the executive function. And so what it leaves is very, very little. Whoops, what have I just done? I've just ended the slideshow, sorry. There we go. It leaves very, very little resources to perhaps, put it into the areas that we really need it in order. Still nothing. Okay. We're definitely not live, sadly. Anyway, not to worry. Shall I just quickly reply?
Of course.
Let me just say, okay, not to worry. Otherwise she'll be. Yeah, so I think what happens then is clients are a bit like, oh wow, okay, that explains the reason why, when I am triggered, I find it really, really difficult to function. And I think that realization becomes even more profound when they realize that the autonomic nervous system is there to protect them and has been all along. And actually it's their kind of life experiences that have not messed it up, but have made it, let's call it trigger happy. Yeah. So they haven't felt as safe as they could have, and when they don't feel safe, the alarm goes off. And so this is going on all the time. So we have this thing, and also being coined neuroception, and neuroception is the most amazing kind of tool that we have as beings, and it's, I kind of like to call it like a force field around us. And what it is really is it's taking all of the information from if we're having a social interaction, from the person we're having a social interaction with, and also at the same time environmental conditions. Do I feel safe in this room, or in this wood, or in this park? So it's doing hundreds of thousands of kind of calculations, and it's feeding all of that back into the brain, and the brain then makes a story about that. And actually 80% of the body's nerve fibers are sending information from the body to the brain. And so if the alarm system's constantly kicking off, that's a huge amount of information being sent to the brain. And that's why it's really important, not important, but it really helps to try and modify one's environment to make you feel safer, because if you feel safer, the alarm system doesn't go off so much. So if we talk about what makes us feel safe, there are two real main sort of, I guess, areas. One is the social side, and the other side is environmental. Okay, and when we think of kind of examples of that, when we look at, let's say, the workplace, we often have reasonable adjustments that mean that we can take more time to do stuff, or we work with headphones on because perhaps our neuroception is picking up too much noise, and so that feeds into the brain, that distracts us. So there are all sorts of little things. And then from the social side, do you get on with your boss? Do you get on with your teacher? And those are really fundamental connections. And if those connections aren't there, it's really hard to feel safe. And so trying to kind of nurture those connections, or have someone try and nurture them with you, as in your parents or co-workers, is really, really key. Because the connection is what makes us stay in the green, if that makes sense. So if we go back to this model, yeah, I just want to grab something. So when I talk about connection, I'm talking about a thing called what we call co-regulation, which is sorry, not that one, this one. It's easier to understand. We're talking about co-regulation, and co-regulation is this ability for us to make these connections with others, and it's a biological imperative, because obviously, in order to procreate, we need to meet another, a spouse or whatever. Sorry, getting hooked up on that one. And so it is, and also having friends is just is one of the most amazing things. And being friends with people is one of the most amazing things as well. And that helps us feel safe. And so when we're looking at this, so what I quite like to do is just kind of move on to maybe trying to talk about some forms of solutions and stuff like that, and just some examples, just so we keep to time. So what I was going to say, also, if you're out socially, for instance, there's a lot of reporting from people with ADHD, like, because they hear so much of everyone's conversation, it's really difficult for them to then concentrate on the conversation they want to. So in order to engineer that kind of environment, a safer environment for them where they don't feel out of place, try and get one-to-ones. Try and go out just with one friend at a time, or maybe two friends at a time, or three, but group situations are really overwhelming a lot of the time. Also, choose a less stimulating environment. If you go to like a packed pub, you've got noise, you've got smells, you've got, it's all going on, bright lights, so again, that your neuroception will be going mental. I mean, it'll be sending so much information to you. And so then it's really hard to then, have your executive functions available to have a decent conversation with that person you're trying to connect with. So when you're trying to connect with others, try and do it, if possible, in a less stimulating environment. When we think of like kids in classrooms, often they feel more vulnerable sitting in the middle of the classroom than they do at the back. And the reason for that is when at the back of the classroom, they have a 180 view of what's going on. So they're not worrying what's behind them. And that means they can then really attend to what the teacher says. Now, we know for a fact with kids with ADHD, everybody goes, oh, well, they get easily distracted, so I'll have them right at the front. Well, if you've got a kid that is hyper vigilant, that's a disaster. You need them at the back. And yeah, they might mess around a bit, but they'll attend to your lesson way more than if they're sitting at the front. Also, body doubling. Why does body doubling work so well? It works because we are connecting with others, and so we feel safe. I mean, it's just wonderful stuff. Also, when we feel safe, we don't have to mask as much, and so that goes down the road of and masking is incredibly energy intensive. It's the one thing that drains the ADHD battery quicker than anything else, is masking, generally in social situations or in work situations. And so, if you can hang with your tribe, you're not having to mask. If you work for a company that gets you, you're not having to mask. If you're doing a role that you're authentically interested in, you're not having to mask. I mean, and I know these are really difficult things to engineer, but if you can just get one or two of them right, suddenly you'll see an improvement in that feeling of safety. So when we talk about trying to stay in the green zone or trying to get to the green zone, again, what we're trying to do is think of, so we know lots of us are always talking about triggers, and triggers essentially move us down this ladder. And Deb Dana, who coined the word, I think she coined the word glimmers move us up the ladder. And so it's really, working with clients to identify what are those glimmers. And usually those glimmers are 100% associated with their character strengths and their authenticity. And when we can get those coming out, then suddenly they're spending more time in the green. So, yeah, I think that's I'll wrap it up there. Let me stop
Richard,
sharing.
it's great, especially because you've really given a specific label and attachment to so many things that we talk about, characteristics of ADHD almost abstractly, but sort of hearing how hard we ADHDers need to work to even give the appearance of, being connected in a way that is familiar and sort of acceptable is exhausting. Especially your example of a child in the classroom and where they learn and why it's important to consider where they're sitting. You also touched on social situations, and RSD is such a huge challenge for so many ADHDers. Many have said it's the most debilitating symptom, and that sort of wraps up a whole bunch of symptoms into one characteristic that is absolutely overwhelming and can be, and certainly the source of many of the struggles that you've discussed.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. So whilst I was researching for this talk, I came across an article in the Attitude magazine written by Michelle Frank. Traumatic stress alongside ADHD, 5 reasons clinicians need to consider trauma. Now, it goes on to mention RSD. People with ADHD can become strongly emotional, triggered by perceived rejection or anticipation of judgment, often because of hurtful experiences related to their differences. This is called RSD. So anyway, it's really interesting that this whole sort of one man's trauma is not another one's, if you know what I mean. One person's trauma is not the same as someone else's, and there is some kind of belief out there that perhaps ADHD systems are more sensitive anyway, and are therefore more susceptible to perhaps feeling. Anyway, let's just leave it there. But my point being is that if someone has mild trauma, it's still trauma. We may look at it and go, oh, that doesn't seem very bad, but actually that's not the point. For that person, it's really real. And so and I think, again, trauma polyvagal theory, that's, I mean, that was the main reason why they came up with polyvagal theory, was to explain trauma, which is kind of why it fits. I think it fits so well with ADHD.
And your pie chart sort of illustrating the amount of effort that is drawn to the emotional regulation or dysregulation portion of our executive function capacity is really quite striking as well, because that just shows exactly where all of our energy is going, especially at that moment.
Yeah, and I think that's just it really helps. Then it really helps clients, because if they're having a bad day, it's okay. They know they're having a bad day because they're getting triggered. It's then what resources do I have available to either remove myself completely from the situation, or are there other things that I can anchor myself on that I know the glimmers will get me back out, or help get me some way out. Yeah.
Richard, thank you for breaking down so many emotions associated with ADHD, and also what we can do to stay in the green, I think, as you put it, and just be in an environment that in which we feel comfortable and supported, and most importantly, where we can be our authentic selves.
Yeah,
so thank you very much.
All right, pleasure. Take care.
Bye. Thank you all.
Yes.